Okay. Who got here an hour early today? Oh, look. Oh, you got here. No, but you meant to, though. Oh, okay. See, that's the problem with all these kind of Internet of Things and phones and stuff that automatically update themselves. It used to be the funnest thing to be on setup on this Sunday of the year because you get people arriving an hour early. Like, oh. All right. Well, my bedside clock didn't change, so me and Arthur got up at 4 a.m. this morning, thinking, oh, it was 5 a.m. Oh, great, fantastic. Oh, you got something? Yes. Okay. Yeah. Yes. All right, Sally's going to say something about Alpha.
Sorry, I wasn't sure whether to interrupt you or not, but
Grant did.
I know he did. He said, well, I'm going anyway. Okay, just to remind you that Alpha will be starting in 2 weeks today at our house. So if you have people that you want to invite, please do. And I was just thinking, this week we were at a family funeral, and it was billed as a humanist funeral. But when we got there, we sang Lord of All Hopefulness, which didn't quite fit. And then at the end, the most poignant part was they played Vera Lynn's We'll Meet Again. And slightly amusing, but I think basically just really made me realise there's just a deep ache in those people that despite all the bluster, oh, when you're dead, actually there is that hope that maybe this isn't the end. And so I think the people that we know, the people that are around us, our friends and family, acquaintances that don't know him, there is that ache deep within. And Alpha is just such a great opportunity for people to come and find hope. So let's be really asking God who we can invite, and there will be some invitations if you need them. So please see me about that. Okay, thank you.
Just turn to the person next to you and say, who are you thinking of inviting? And see who they answer. Oh, 7 o'clock. Turn to the person next to you. Who are they thinking of inviting to Alpha? Okay. It's amazing how often we can listen to a message very attentively, and it just goes in and out without any kind of processing. We want to be people that process what God's saying. Right, so we are kind of just over halfway through the faith series. This is an extra one that I've put in just to count up where we're up to. And hopefully there will be a few little nuggets in here that will be useful to you as you're processing. Since you've talked so much to the person next to you, talk to the person on the other side of you. I want you to say, has there been anything from the series so far that God has stirred in your mind? Maybe it was an illustration or a point, or there's something that you've practiced coming out of the series so far which has caused you to think or behave differently. 35 seconds, just to be precise. Okay, all right. I gave you 37. Oh, we've all got such a lot to say to each other, haven't you? All right, if you liked what they were saying, get them a coffee afterwards and hear the rest of it. Okay, so when we were looking at the second episode, we were still defining what faith was, and we talked about personal conviction and be able to hear God. And I said at the time that the problem with referring to hearing God, it makes you think just of what you get with your ear receptors. But there are different ways that God speaks to us or communicates to us. It's probably a better idea. And I've asked Debbie to come and share a little bit on what it means to catch from God, which is something that we've learned from Rachel Turner.
Faith. Lovely. Okay, so chatting and catching. Something that we've been talking in LifeLine Church about for many, many years. And it was introduced to us, as Jamie said, through this book called Parenting Children for a Life of Faith by Rachel Turner. And I personally found that teaching really, really helpful. And as Jamie said, as we're talking about faith, I was like, come on, we've got to think about how we catch from God. Now, some of you in the room will have heard about this before. You will have varying experiences of catching from God. But I really believe God's got something new for us. So I want you just to close your eyes and take a minute and just say to God, I found it tricky before, but I want some new revelation, or help me to understand something new from this today. I'm going to pray. Father, thank you that you always want to talk to us. Help us this morning. Amen. So chatting. Chatting is that bit of talking to God. We often call it prayer. But in Rachel's book, she talks about chatting because she doesn't want that religious view of what prayer could be to stop people from really receiving and really having that communication with God like you are chatting to your friend or your family. For the catching part, I'm just going to read what she says. When God made us, he made us for the whole purpose of hanging out with him, chatting with him, talking back and forth, and being in relationship with him. So that's how he made our body. He made our bodies to catch everything he wants to say to us. And because he's pretty clever, he doesn't just talk in words. He talks in a whole bunch of ways that our body can catch. When we catch, we need to be ready. It's really hard to catch when you're not looking. God's message can pass us by unnoticed if we're not aware that he may be trying to communicate with us. Other times, we can forget to keep our ways of catching ready. We can be focused on one way, and then we miss what God is speaking to us. There's several main ways that we can catch from God. Now, I didn't have a lesson in how to use this thing. Is it the top one? This one. This one. Catching. Okay, our whole body. So, the first one of the first ways is pictures in our minds. So just take a second and close your eyes, and I want you to picture your family. Okay? If you've got a picture of your family, okay, you can open your eyes again now. We're seeing that picture in our mind. We're not using our eyes. That's the place where God likes to meet us. Words in our minds. If we're singing in our heads or we're reading a book quietly, we can identify that place in our head where we can put words and hear things without using our ears. Guided thoughts. Sometimes when we're thinking a lot about things, solutions pop into our minds. Other times we're pondering and we arrive at a decision that makes us feel really, really good. God loves helping us think through big questions, and he loves participating in them. I think it was this one situation that really comes to mind is when I was pondering a discussion I'd had with a manager, and she'd said to me, I think you're just frightened to go to university and get a degree. And I'd gone, no, of course I'm not. And then I was pondering it in the car, and yeah, I think I was. And suddenly, in my thinking, God said, if I am the God that you say I am, who can heal, couldn't I take you to university? Couldn't it be a whole different situation? And I had to say, yeah. And it was that point when God changed something in my thinking and in my attitude. And I eventually did go to university. Through our eyes and our ears. So some people hear God's voice audibly, and sometimes people see things that not everyone can see. I've not had that experience, but it can be really powerful and a really natural way of perceiving God. I know a couple of people who've been pondering a question and talking to God, and they've suddenly looked at something and they felt, yeah, there's an answer. God starts to give them an answer through their conversation with him as they look at something. With our skin. The skin is the largest organ in the body, so it makes sense that God could chat to us using our skin. Catching with our skin it can be like a tingling feeling, a warm feeling, a heavy hand, and so many other ways. I remember an incident in Sparklers where a little boy was saying, I don't know if God really loves me. And as we did the chat and catch, he felt a massive hug. There was nobody standing next to him. And we said, that's God. You're catching God there. And it said to him, God does love me. With our feelings and our emotions. God, he created emotions and he can use them. And often, if we're ready to catch with our emotion, we can feel a peace, an excitement, a joy, a sense of justice. And with our guts. This is just the feeling that I know that I know. We can also feel like a righteousness or a wrongness in a situation that causes us to either stop what we're doing or maybe pray in a different way. Dreams. We can catch some great stuff from God while we're sleeping, but not every dream is from God. When we catch from God, it needs to be in what, when we're catching from God, it connects in with what we already know about God, what his word says. Okay? So God speaks in different ways. And as individuals, we are all unique, catching better in some ways than others. As we look out for God's voice in our lives and engage our bodies in the process, it can be really freeing. God is always speaking. The aim is to be ready to catch what he is saying.
Thank you, Debs. I always remember my dad's story of one meeting. He'd looked up and saw someone walk into the building, and he just felt a sudden pain in his bottom. And he felt that was God giving him a warning, that this person's going to be a pain in the bottom. And his response to that was to ask two of the larger stewards to make themselves available near this person if they need to be escorted out. But it's interesting, that's not necessarily, you're going to find that in the Bible or the handbook, really, are you? But God knew what my dad would know that meant when it came. Okay. When I was... I've had a number of conversations with people on the back of the Faith series recently, and I thought that it was a very interesting observation that this young person gave me the other day when I asked a question: do you feel God saying anything to you? And in regards to a particular decision that needed to be made, and they just said no. Now, one of the things that I've learned to ask when trying to help someone take a faith position is, have you ever heard God before? Because we can say no, and therefore we assume that God's not wanting to say something. But if we don't have a reference for it, that's probably where we need to start. And I said, so have you ever felt a direction from God before? And this young person said, I've had a sense of God's presence, but I've never had a sense of God's direction. I thought, that's a very interesting observation. A lot of us might feel God's presence, that sense of warmth, that sense of love, that sense of reassurance that he's with us. But sometimes we're also looking to see which of the paths in front of us he's directing us to take. And looking for God's presence is a reassurance that he's with us, but also at times we want that sense of direction. And one of the things that I've been advising people to do when you've got a decision in front of you is, well, why don't you take the time to write down the pros and the cons to the decision in front of you? So, because I know that it's difficult to get past what's currently in our heads to be able to open our minds for God to speak. So I said, write down all of the reasons for this decision and all the reasons against it. Once you've done that, I said, put that aside, move that off of the desk, and now bring a new piece of paper in front of you and ask God the question, what do you want to say to me right now? What is it? And just pause and wait and see what comes up, and then write down whatever comes. Even if it doesn't make sense, even if it's a lyric from a song you've listened to, or a movie that you'd watched, or a verse that comes to mind, just jot it down, and let's see if God's going to unpack. It might be a piece of the puzzle that comes later. I thought it would be worthwhile just sharing this little process with you, just in case you guys also find this helpful. But the idea of actually taking the time to say, this is what I think. Now I'm putting that aside and I'm opening up the space for you to talk. It's not denying that I have an opinion or a preference. I did something similar once when there was a particular person that had been really out of order to my dad, and he'd left the church and he'd moved away, and my parents had gone up to visit him, and when they got back, I said, well, did you address this issue, this issue, this issue, this issue, and this issue? And my dad said, no, didn't pick any of those up. I said, well, he's coming down to see us in a couple of weeks. You can pick it up with him yourself. I made 3 sides of notes of all of the offenses that this person had committed, and I was ready to get them. Now, obviously, this was not sitting well in my gut. It was like there was a twisting going on, and I was uncomfortable. And so I talked to another leader about it, and I said, let me just sound you out. Here's all of my complaints. And they let me read all of them to them. And they said to me, yep, they're all accurate. And if you want, you can screw this person to the ground, or you could ask God what he would like you to say. So I did this. I put out the 3 sheets of paper on the desk. And I said, God, this is what's on my mind. Now I'm choosing to push those out, and I'm asking you, what do you want to say? And then I felt, all right, time to pour the papers back in front. And I crossed out one by one, by one, by one, all of the offenses that I wanted to raise. And then there was just 2 that I circled. But the basis for circling those was for this person's good, not to make me feel better, not to win, not to justify myself. It was to try and equip them for the life that was ahead of them. God worked in me during that process. And as it turned out, even the 2 things that I raised, the person was utterly defensive of, and I didn't get anywhere with them. And I thought, you know what? If I'd gone into this conversation hoping to get some kind of satisfaction from watching this person grovel, I would have been deeply dissatisfied because there was no repentance, no apology from them anyway. And so I felt not only did God put my heart in a position towards this person where I was for them, he also saved me from where my bitterness was leading me. I want to show you this story. This is a story written by Max Lucado. It's often known as the Punchinello story. Because I think this speaks to the process of taking a faith position. So let's just listen to this story being read to us.
You Are Special, written by Max Lucado. The Wemmicks were small, wooden people carved by a woodworker named Eli. Each Wemmick was different. Some had big noses, others had large eyes. Some were tall and others were short. Each Wemmick had a box of golden star stickers and grey dot stickers. The wooden people went around the village sticking stars or dots on one another. The pretty ones got stars. Wemmicks with rough wood or chipped paint got dots. The talented ones got stars too. Some could jump over tall boxes or sing pretty songs. Others, though, could do little. They got dots. Punchinello was one of these. He tried to jump high like others, but he always fell, so the Wemmicks would give him dots. When he tried to explain why he fell, he would say something silly, so the Wemmicks would give him more dots. He deserves lots of dots, the wooden people would say. After a while, Punchinello believed them. I guess I'm not a good Wemmick, he decided, so he stayed inside most of the time. When he did go outside, he hung around other Wemmicks who had lots of dots. He felt better around them. One day he met a different kind of Wemmick named Lucia. She had no dots or stars. The Wemmicks admired Lucia for having no dots, so they would give her a star, but it would fall off. Others gave her a dot for having no stars. But it wouldn't stay either. That's the way I want to be, thought Punchinello. So he asked Lucia how she did it. It's easy, she replied. Every day I go visit Eli, the woodcarver. Why? You'll find out if you go see him. Then Lucia turned and skipped away. But will he want to see me? Punchinello wondered. Later at home, he sat and watched the wooden people giving each other stars and dots. It's not right, he muttered to himself. And he decided to go see Eli. Punchinello walked up the narrow path and stepped into Eli's shop. His eyes grew big. The stool was as tall as he was. He had to stretch on tiptoe to see the top of the workbench. Punchinello swallowed hard. I'm not staying here. Then he heard his name. Punchinello! The voice was deep and strong. How good to see you. Come, let me have a look at you. Punchinello looked up. You know my name? Of course, I made you. Eli picked him up and set him on the bench. Looks like you've been given some bad marks, said the maker. Well, I didn't mean to, Eli. I really tried hard. Punchinello, I don't care what the other Wemmicks think. You don't? No, you shouldn't either. What they think doesn't matter. All that matters is what I think. And I think you are pretty special. Punchinello laughed. Me special? Why? I'm not very talented and my paint is peeling. Why do I matter to you? Eli spoke very slowly. Because you're mine. That's why you matter to me. Punchinello didn't know what to say. Every day I've been hoping you'd come, Eli explained. I came because I met Lucia, said Punchinello. Why don't the stickers stay on her? The maker spoke softly, because she has decided that what I think is more important than what others think. The stickers only stick if you let them. What? The stickers only stick if they matter to you. The more you trust my love, the less you care about their stickers. I'm not sure I understand. Eli smiled. You will, but it will take time. For now, come to see me every day and let me remind you how much I care. Eli lifted Punchinello off the bench and set him on the ground. Remember, Eli said as Punchinello was leaving, you're special because I made you, and I don't make mistakes. Punchinello didn't stop, but in his heart he thought, I think he really means it. And when he did, a dot fell to the ground.
So that line there, in his heart, he thought, I think he really means it. And when he did, a dot fell to the ground. That he took a faith position. He chose to believe what God said, and it started to transform his whole mindset and the choices that he will later make. I was thinking about this idea of how do we get rid of those dots? And in this case, how do we get rid of the stars? Either way, they make us a slave, whether you've got lots of stars or lots of dots. My kids play this game, which usually it's got lots of Marvel pictures, and you've got to manage to get them in a row. But the concept kind of stuck out to me about we can have all these human opinions that we've taken upon ourselves, and it fills all of our view. Whether it's things that we've said about ourselves, or if it's things that are said about that other people have said about us. But then there's an invitation when God makes us aware of his opinion. And that there is a process of choosing to accept that. As we accept that, what he says, it pushes out the opinions that were once there that weren't of God's. It's similar to when we looked at that story of the street kids. You remember, he's living on the street, he doesn't feel like a prince, but yet he's been offered this evidence, he's been offered this birth certificate. And just that process of it takes God's opinion, the acceptance of God's opinion, to push out the human opinion, because that's quite different to our culture. And it's different to Disney and all those things that would give you this idea that you just search within yourself to find the true you, and you draw it up to the surface, and then you exert it on the world around you as if you have the monopoly on your own truth. We've got to have something outside of us to tell us who we are. We can't do it. We can't find it from the inside. I need a mirror to look in. I don't know which way my hair is going right now. I don't know if it's going to the left or to the right, or if there's any there left. It's getting thinner. I have to look. I've got to get a reference outside of me to know what I'm like. Now, when we look towards God to be our reference point, we actually realize, I'm made in his image. I reflect what he's like. I need something greater than me to tell me who I am. So our modern day culture of be yourself is absolute nonsense. No one ever is themselves. We are always looking for something to affirm what we are. We need something greater than ourselves to affirm us. And it's what we choose to believe, whether what humans say about us or what we say about ourselves or what God says. And you see in that story, the human opinion took its position, or the Wemmick opinion took its position. After a while, Punchinello believed them. He put his weight in the barrel, the wheelbarrow of what they said, and he chose a mindset and attitudes and actions that were in line with that opinion. He started hanging out with other people with dots because it made him feel better. He didn't want to go out much. He didn't want to be around. He didn't want to position himself in front of his maker because he had accepted that opinion about him. He put his weight in the wheelbarrow like we saw before. But the moment of choice comes when you hear Eli describing Lucia, the Wemmick with no dots or stars that Punchinello met. Eli says, because she decided that what I think is more important what others think. There was a decision that Lucia had made to push into what God says that forced the other thoughts out. Tim Keller often describes, we've got to let the gospel burrow into the center of our being, and when that pushes into the middle, everything else is pushed out. It matters less. But there's got to be something that is pushing the other things out. Otherwise, we've just got a vacuum. We can't live with a vacuum. There's got to be something that we are choosing to believe instead of these other things. And there's a faith that comes through that process of saying, I'm choosing to believe what God says. That means that what I believed before will fall out the way. What I think we do a lot of the time is we try and hold both at the same time. Yeah, God says all these wonderful things about me, but if I just had this, that is where I'd get my meaning from. When I was younger, when I would ask a girl out and she would say no, it was not enough consolation that my mum thought I was a catch. I believe that my mum says that, but if I only had that girl say yes, that's really where I'm putting my weight and my hope. But there's something that comes when we're in the presence of God, when we see him for who he is, that means that his word becomes more treasured and precious to us than anything else. And when we receive that, it begins to push the other things out of place. Now, in a few weeks, we're going to do one of the other topics is called Sherpering, which is a word that, as I said before, I'm pushing to be accepted into the dictionary. How do we help each other hear what God's saying and step into that? Well, Mark and Alex, I heard, have a little story. So you guys come up here, and we've not practiced this, but I think I know the story enough to ask him a question. So Alex was considering doing the Sierra Leone team in April. Where did you get to on your consideration if this was whether to do this or not? What were the things in your mind?
Well, I wanted to do it, and I've wanted to do it for years, but it's just, I've never really had the funds, I've never really had the time, I've been working, but this time felt a little bit different. The desire was still really there, but then there was still something holding me back. I couldn't quite put down what it was.
So you have a conversation with Mark. How did he present to you, Mark? What did he say?
Well, we did it in...
No, Mark, what does Mark do?
All conversations happen over breakfast, of course. So we were sitting there and we were chatting, and he was saying, I've got a real desire to go and do this. and I feel that I've heard from God, but there's this thing. And that's the thing that I sort of drilled in on. What is that thing that's stopping you then? Because all the practicals are there. In theory, the money's there because he's got it and he saved it and put it to one side, etc. But it was that thing that I wanted him to look at. And I sort of said, how do you think you've heard from God? And he sort of said, well, I'm sure I've heard from him. So I said, so where's that negative thing coming from then? And I said that, doesn't it say in the Bible that my sheep know my voice? And that was the penny dropping at that moment in time.
So that there was a reassurance that came from that verse, but then there was a question of, the practical question was, you could pay the deposit, but then you wouldn't be able to get the time booked off. And that was a real hurdle. What was it that Mark said at that point that kind of cleared the barrier out for you?
So I was worried so money's a big thing for me. So I was worried that if I put the deposit down and then I couldn't go because I couldn't get the annual leave for some reason, that money would be kind of wasted. And Mark said, well, whose money is it anyway? And I was like, oh, yeah, you're right.
And so in that moment, there was a release that came for you. Though the words came out of Mark, I believe you heard God, because what did it feel like? Or
a lot of my conversations with Mark end with me coming with some kind of problem and him just saying that one little thing that makes you go, oh, you're so right, but it's in such a way that I don't want you to be right. And then I know I've heard from God because it's like contrary to what I originally thought. And then everything changes and my whole mindset. It's not like a penny drop kind of moment. It's more like okay, I thought like this and now everything's different.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. What I liked about that was Mark was not saying, this is what you must do. He was trying to help stress test Alex's position. And he could see that Alex was getting hung up on this thing that was undermining what Alex was also feeling was the nudge of God. And so just by asking those questions, whose money is it anyway, it caused a release in Alex. And I think that's the way that we help each other, because I got the story right at the end with Alex messaging me saying, I've paid the deposit for Sierra Leone. If I can't go, please give that money to the Nehemiah project. I was like, I felt blessed by that. And I thought, what a wonderful resolve on worrying about your money. It is a gift that I've been able to give. And so when we help each other find a faith position, sometimes it's just asking simple questions like that, or reminding people of verses and truths in the Bible, or reflecting back to people things that they have said before. I've heard God say this to me. We don't have to fix everything, don't have to fix anything. We just reflect with people and through that process. So I thought that was a useful story that is very present for us. Right, we're going to take the remaining time now to break bread together. Now, what I have in my mind, you're going to receive the wine where you are, sitting down. And our first response, we're going to start with the wine. And this is going to be a vertical connection, us and God, just you and God, where you are. And what I want you to remember while taking the wine, and I'll tell you when we're going to take it. Just hold it in your hand when it comes to you. I want you to be saying to God, remembering to God, what He showed you of Himself in His nature, in His track record, because when we come back to the wine, it represents the blood that Jesus shed. That blood bought us. that blood set us free. That blood was the basis on which we can relate to God now. And so partly taking this wine is taking opportunity to remember what that blood has done. And so we're going to do that first. Then after that, the bread will be handed out to you where you are. But you're not going to stay in your seat. You're going to go take that bread and you're going to give it to someone else with a story of how God has proved himself to you. This is a testimony, and I want you to consider the bread a gift and your testimony a gift, because you are celebrating who God is, what he's done, and you're inviting someone else to receive that at the same time. So just as Jesus' body was broken, we share in that. We give and we receive. We're going to be doing that with the bread as well. And then we're going to come back into a time of worship together. So, Stuart, if you could hand out